cheating.
Well, let's talk about a few examples of that, of the study cheating, of the cheating
Oh,
that
sure,
the scientists were doing
it's
on
very
the study.
yeah, it's very dramatic. These were done by doctors, and of course,
Mm-hmm.
doctors are not exactly trained in survey research, but they had what was called a case reporting form, where they were
Okay.
supposed to write stuff in. That would be like a questionnaire in a survey. And they were supposed to describe any adverse reactions to the drugs. And here's the way they cheated. It was simply not to, they would say no adverse reactions. And this would be someone like a patient who was given AZT, uh, developed such severe anemia several times that he
Mm.
had to be hospitalized and given transfusions to save his life,
Mm.
and developed also other horrible reactions. And they just said no adverse reactions, which of course is an out and out lie because there were
Wow.
incredibly severe reactions. Another type of cheating, the most blatant, to be eligible for the study,
Mm-hmm.
you could not have been on AZT, because the whole point of the study was that the patient and doctors were not supposed to know who was getting what. They weren't supposed to know who got AZT and who got, a sugar pill.
Okay.
But this patient had been on AZT before the study, so he was entered illegally. He shouldn't have been entered at all. When they did enter him, they entered him as a placebo patient, even though he considered taking AZT. He was in the study very briefly, about 2 months, dropped out, and then shortly after he died, and they recorded him as a death in the placebo group, even though he died from AZT poisoning. Never saw.
Wow.
I mean, this is it's impossible to be any more blatant in cheating than that.
John, how is it that these people were not brought up on criminal charges?
Well, they should have been. It's just that there's a lot of injustice in the world, and this is not the only example of it. I cannot, I cannot explain what happened at this closed meeting of the Food and Drug Administration. It's just whatever happened, they decided to accept, all of this data, and they knew it was fraudulent.
My gosh. I'd like to interview your contact at the FDA. Would you mind giving me or give her my contact info, whichever?
No, this is a long time ago. This was
Oh,
1987. That's 22 years ago.
oh, okay. So
I
she's
couldn't do that, and she might not be alive even. But
yeah.
also, as a journalist, there are times when you simply have to give people a pledge of confidentiality.
Yes,
I mean, this
absolutely.
is even reporters from the New York Times actually went to jail rather than reveal the names of their informants. So it's sort of a principle.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Um, Now, what? Let's talk about let's talk about when that time when when in the early 80s when this was just starting to make the news and whatnot. I remember seeing on Good Morning America. It seems like every other day they were doing reports on this AIDS business. Um, uh, uh, what inspired you to use your professional skills in analyzing and deciphering statistics to and say, wait a minute, this is odd. Let's investigate this. What inspired that?
Well, there's several things. As I said, I'm a gay liberationist, and I've been a gay historian and known as such
Okay.
since 1974. And I'm also, as I said, a survey researcher. So I looked at the news stories. This is in 1983,
Mm-hmm.
and it was just clear to me that they didn't know what they were doing. So I was very naive. I thought, gee, maybe I can help them. Well, of course, I only found out later that they didn't want help at all. They were busy creating their own thing, and the last thing in the world they wanted was help. But I read in '83 every single medical report on, I don't even know if it was called AIDS then.
Mm-hmm.
There were about 20 of them.
I think up until 81 it was called it was called GRID, gay
It was
related immune deficiency.
it was called that briefly, and then some of the gay leaders objected to it.
Mm-hmm.
I forget all of the different names that were used. For a while, AIDS stood for autoimmune something deficiency syndrome because they thought that the body might be destroying itself, and then it turned out that was not feasible, and so they changed it to the current acronym.
Mm.
But anyway, back in '83, there was still a certain freedom in making hypotheses. And so a number of the medical articles discussed the role of toxins as a possibility.
Okay.
And one of them I think it was, I'm not sure what the medical journal was, but they used the phrase drugs plus bugs.
Mm.
In other words, it might be both toxins as well as germs of some sort. But then it all changed in '84 when there was a press announcement where the Secretary of Health said that the probable cause of AIDS had been discovered, and almost immediately a type of censorship set in where you simply couldn't discuss any other cause of AIDS, not even as cofactors, except a virus. But anyway, my first major article was in the gay paper, the Philadelphia Gay News.
Okay.
And I dealt it, almost entirely with the CDC statistics. And they used what they call hierarchical statistics, which is a phony thing. I mean, I had never seen it before. But they took the groups there, gay men, intravenous drug users, and Haitians being the main ones.
Mm-hmm.
And they listed the biggest group first, gay men,
Okay.
men who have sex with men. Then they listed intravenous drug users, but they only listed them if they had not already been included as gay men. So what about a gay man who is an intravenous drug user? Well, he's not counted. He's only counted as a gay man, but not an intravenous drug user. And then the Haitians, well, what about a Haitian who's gay and uses drugs? No, he's only counted as a Haitian. So it gives a very distorted picture. It makes sex look like by far the most important thing. Whereas, in fact, which makes you think immediately, well, if it's sex, it's probably a
venereal disease.
A venereal disease, exactly. In other words, communicable. If you had intravenous drug users first, you might say, well, isn't this, caused by the drugs, perhaps? But anyway, I went into that, and the fact that they had absolutely no concern for all of the drugs which are not, taken through needles. All of the different pills, all of the drugs that are inhaled, they didn't count, except that the early AIDS cases used, most of them half a dozen different drugs, all of which are bad for the health, and they just ignored them. And to me, one of the most unforgivable